Hey everyone, in this video we'll be looking at chapter 20 of Peopleware, which is called Human Capital. The authors start out with an analogy between different ways companies spend money. Imagine that you bought a handheld computer for $100. Is that an expense? It depends. It depends on if you categorize it as an expense or not, and that's an important distinction for accounting purposes. If you choose to think of it as something that is consumed in the current time period, like a heating bill or a food bill, then yes, it's an expense. But if you think of it as an asset that will be used over and over again over the course of time, you're making an investment and capitalizing on the expenditure. In other words, you're not taking a loss on your income. You've just transferred the value of X amount of dollars into X amount of dollars of value in a computing device. This investment should serve you over the course of many time periods because you gain the ongoing effect resulting from that one-time event of turning dollars into computers. And it's given the term capitalizing rather than just incurring an expense. Where do people fall into these categories? Are employees an expense or an investment? Well, you could make the case that since employees provide their services in the form of labor, which is given and paid for on a regular basis every couple weeks or once a month, depending on the salary cycle, that it's an expense. After all, heating and air conditioning are also paid for and consumed on a regular basis in a similar manner, in an analogous manner. And while there's certainly veracity to that view, it misses the potential for there to be an investment done. The example the authors give is in sending employees to a training seminar or a convention where they can learn some new skill or do networking, etc. This is capitalizing the expenditure of an employee's salary because she is learning something that will make her better and more effective in her job on an ongoing basis throughout the coming months. And that's a good thing for the company. From an accounting standpoint, you still think of the salary expenditure as an expense and the seminar fee as an expense. But in your ideation, it should be viewed as an investment. Now a question arises. Why does it matter if you think of an employee as an expense or as an investment? It matters greatly because whether you invest specifically in training or not, a person will gain domain knowledge that makes her more valuable to the company than a new hire. It's important to be aware of this and to not simply think of people's cost as being interchangeable with someone of a similar salary and, on paper, a similar skill set. The authors ask a thought-provoking question. How much has your company invested in you and your colleagues? It's hard to say, but it gets a little easier to comprehend when you think about what happens when someone on your 5-person or N-person team leaves. Imagine one skilled worker says she will depart, and you hire a replacement. Let's even imagine that there isn't any gap between employment dates, so your team is always fully staffed, although we know that typically isn't the case. Let's also imagine that they're paid the same amount, which can be the case, but isn't always. From the corporate view, the team has enjoyed the smoothest possible transition, and everything is good. Still 5 people filling the various roles that your team requires. But you as the manager of these people do see the less obvious cost. The departing worker had work that was left unfinished, and some of her final time was spent making transition notes for the new hire. The new employee didn't do anything on day 1 because of being taken up with HR paperwork and setting up his computer and his workspace and so on. He probably was negative productivity to the team since he needed help from others getting started. So team-wide productivity actually took a big hit for a couple months while the new guy was getting started, even though from an accounting standpoint there was no change. The cost of bringing someone up to speed is even more dramatic the more specialized domain knowledge is required. One example the authors give is of one of their colleagues who projects that he will spend 2 years getting an already highly skilled and specialized employee to be fully ramped up. Likely, most won't be that case, or it won't take that long to be onboarded, but it seems likely that more time is spent getting onboarded than we'd expect. There is an added incentive to lay people off, which is that the stock market tends to reward it. Cutting costs with minimal impact to output means more money left at the bottom line. and that's great for shareholders. But it ignores the reality that a lot of time was spent capitalizing the human element, and that all of it was thrown out the window for what would be at best a short-term win. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it thought-provoking, and I'll see you all in the next one.